Learning to speak Japanese is one of the hardest parts of learning the language, especially if you don't live in Japan. Maybe you're just starting out and conversations feel awkward, you can't really find the words, you're translating in your head and nothing really flows. Or maybe you've been at it for quite a while, but you've sort of hit a wall, like you're putting in the hours and showing up to lessons, but you're just not improving the way you used to. And either way, something's not working. So this is the video that I wish I had when I started speaking Japanese. Now over the years, I've spent almost $20,000 on learning to speak Japanese. And I'm not gonna lie, a lot of it felt productive in the moment, but I was making mistakes that kept me stuck for way longer than necessary. So to keep you guys from making the same mistakes that I did, I'm going to break down my learnings from over 850 hours of conversation practice into the 3 most important shifts that completely changed how my lessons worked. And these shifts literally took me from being stuck and feeling frustrated to being able to have fluent conversations in Japanese without a big problem today. Okay, quick context. I learned to speak Japanese through a platform called Italki. Basically, you book native speakers for video calls and just practice conversation. I was doing around 3 60-minute sessions per week. And the simple reason for this way of learning was that I was not living in Japan. I was working a full-time job and didn't really have a lot of time at my hands to do tandems, for instance. And I didn't have any Japanese friends or colleagues around. And I really enjoyed learning like that, except I did some mistakes that really cost me a lot of time, money, and energy. So let me show you what I learned. All right, so everyone says just start speaking. And that's terrible advice. And it almost made me quit Japanese entirely. Let me tell you about my very first online speaking lesson. I just finished Genki 1 and Genki 2, and that's, by the way, like very common textbooks for learning Japanese. And I felt ready, put in the hours, learning kanji and grammar, vocab, all of it basically. So I booked my first call and I was nervous but actually excited. And then complete disaster. I was like so anxious, I could barely actually think, and my teacher would say some very basic beginner stuff and I just couldn't understand him. Like words I thought I knew, they just didn't register when he said them at normal talking speed. I'd freeze or I respond with maybe 1 or 2 words. And at that point, my expectations were completely shattered. I thought I'd studied enough that speaking would just come quickly. And instead, I really felt embarrassed, like I failed. And that feeling didn't really improve over the next few lessons. So I came very close to quitting. And here's what I realized now. I basically had it completely backwards. Before starting conversation practice, I'd done basically 0 listening practice, just the dry textbook dialogues that were part of the Genki audio CD that came with it. Listening practice isn't preparation for speaking, it is speaking training. Like when you really listen to Japanese, your brain is doing 2 things. First, it's learning to recognize words and phrases as they're being said, and that's the comprehension part. But second, it's actually absorbing patterns. You know, for instance, how Japanese speakers usually give you the context before actually getting to the point, or how they use phrases like ma, so desu ne, to, you know, like bridge their thoughts. You're not consciously studying these, your brain is just soaking them up. And later, when you speak, those patterns actually come out naturally and you'll be able to identify them a lot easier because you've heard them 100 times. So without that foundation, you're trying to build sentences from scratch while also trying to figure out what's being said to you. So basically, you're getting double screwed. So here's what I did. I upped my listening from 0 to just like 30 minutes a day, nothing crazy. And after only 2 to 3 weeks, I was way better at understanding the basic sentences my teacher was using. Like 2 months in, I went from understanding maybe 10 to 20% of what he said to around maybe 70%. And that made a massive difference because now I wasn't spending like half my mental energy on just trying to understand what he was saying. And more importantly, I'd started building that pattern recognition muscle. Like, don't get me wrong, I was still translating a lot in my head, but more and more sentences would just come out without me having to think about them first. Okay, so listening is the foundation, but once you start having conversations regularly, a different problem shows up, and this one kept me stuck for probably over a year. Here's the hard truth that most people don't want to hear. If you want to break past intermediate level, you need to accept getting worse before you get better. You need to trade some of your hard-earned fluency for experimentation. And most people aren't willing to do that, and this is why they keep being stuck in that intermediate plateau. I didn't understand this for a long time, but here's what happens and why you basically are setting yourself up for a trap. as you progress through different levels of speaking. As a beginner, you will make tons of mistakes, which is fine and normal. If you ask me, in the beginning, it's all about losing the fear of actually speaking and just trying out things. So if you just get in the reps in that first phase, you will reach intermediate level. Like this is where you can have simple conversations on familiar topics and basically you just get by fine. And this is where something really interesting happened for me. As I got more comfortable having conversations, I naturally developed coping strategies that helped me to keep the conversation flowing, even when I didn't know the exact word or phrase I wanted. But here's where most people plateau without realizing it. They've built up coping strategies that got them here, but no, those same strategies basically are keeping them stuck. Filler words or those safe phrases you can always fall back on. For me, it was using the word yatsu or koto for anything that I couldn't name specifically. And here's the funny thing. Those strategies were absolutely essential to getting me to this level. They gave me the confidence to have conversations with the natural flow. But now they were preventing me from pushing past it. I felt I was still putting in effort, but I unconsciously reverted back to the same safe patterns and words every time. And the hard truth is, if you want to move to the next level, you need to accept taking a step back first. You need to find a teacher who's good at actually spotting and pointing out your coping strategies. So you'll get more corrections than before, but more importantly, you actually need to trade some of your fluency for experimentation. And this feels really uncomfortable. You're in a lesson, you want to say something and you have your safe phrase ready to go, but you force yourself to try the new word instead. And you will stumble, you sound less smooth, and for a second, maybe you feel like you're getting even worse, not better. And your ego hates it. But that discomfort is exactly where growth is actually still happening. Like I remember forcing myself to use konomi instead of ski for the first time. I hesitated and I used it semi-wrong and it felt clunky. But my teacher actually understood and just corrected it very smoothly. And after doing that a few times, I actually was able to just, use that word more actively in my vocabulary. So that's a trait, temporary clumsiness and shitty feeling for permanent improvement. But here's the cool part. Because of your already quite high level of Japanese, your listening comprehension or your grammar knowledge and the content that you've already consumed, these new words and phrases will stick quite fast. And you'll start seeing a lot more progress again. But only if you're willing to push through that uncomfortable phase where you feel less fluent than before. If you're not willing to make that trade, you'll probably plateau forever in phase 2. And you'll stay comfortable, you'll have functional conversations, but you'll never reach that level where you can actually 100% express what you want to say. Now there's one more thing that tripped me up, and honestly, it took me the longest to figure out exactly what was going wrong here. Because it didn't feel like a problem at first and actually felt comfortable. So here's something that most people don't realize. The teacher who helped you make tons of progress can become the reason you actually stop progressing. Not because they got worse, but because you got too comfortable. And this actually happened to me. I had a teacher I'd been working with for several months, maybe a year, and he was great. He was really patient, helpful, giving really good feedback, and over time, he almost became like a friend. We would chat casually about our lives, what we did on the weekends, joking around. It felt good, but that was exactly the problem. I'd fallen into what's called the hedonic treadmill. It's like what happens in relationships. In the beginning, everything feels exciting, you're motivated, you put in the effort, but the more time you spend together, the more you take it for granted, and it just becomes okay, like comfortable. And I felt a bit the same with my teacher, to be honest. Like I'd reached a point where we would just comfortably chat, but I would not have that drive and appetite to, push myself further. But when I made the switch and found a new teacher, it completely changed things. First lesson with the new person, I was slightly nervous again, but actually in a good way. I was more thinking about, the things I wanted to say and actually give it a bit more proper attention. And I also felt a bit more on top of my game during the lesson. And it made me realize just how much I'd just been going through the motions before. And this wasn't just like a one-time thing. I've worked with dozens of teachers over the years, and some I only tried for 1 or 2 lessons because, the chemistry wasn't quite there. But with around 5 to 6 of them, I've had many lessons. And each time I stayed with one for too long, I'd notice that same comfortable plateau creeping in. So I'd switch again. Now, important point, switching teachers is not a magic fix if you're not doing the work yourself. But if you're putting in the hours, both in the lessons and outside of them, and you're still stuck, it's probably time for trying something fresh. You should not feel obligated to keep booking, the same teacher over and over again if you're not making any progress. Because in the end, I know it sounds harsh, but you're paying for a service. So, would I spend that $20,000 again? Yeah, absolutely. But if I'd known these 3 shifts from day one, I would have saved myself a lot of money and I could have progressed a lot faster, I guess. But look, these 3 shifts made a huge difference for me. But in the end, the most important thing is that your lessons actually feel enjoyable. Because that is keeping you, showing up to these lessons anyway, even when life gets crazy. And being consistent with it is how you actually get fluent. And if you want to learn more about how to be more consistent with learning Japanese in general, not just speaking, you may want to check out this video up here next. See you in the next one. Bye.